excited about playing BYU. Good football team. You know, they have started the year off, you know, really, really good. You know, had a nice, obviously really nice win on the road against Texas. They, you know, beat them, I think, 41-7, really played good football early and had it rolling, and then ran into a little bit of a rough stretch in the middle of the year, and then have kind of rebounded and played well these last couple of weeks. So, you know, they're what you would expect from BYU. They're big and they're physical and they're long, tall kids. They look a lot like Stanford. Their football team's going to look a lot like Stanford's football team physically. Just a lot of tall, athletic guys. You know, they're executing well offensively. Robert and I, their offensive coordinator there is a good football coach. I worked with him at Texas Tech. You know, the good thing about Robert's teams are all the teams that he coaches, the units he coaches are always going to be tough and play physical and you know, play with that attitude you want an offense to play with, and they do that for sure. And then defensively, you know, Broncos always done a nice job. They're going to be really varied in what they do from a scheme standpoint. Show you a lot of different looks, based out of an odd front, which allows them to be pretty multiple in what they do. A lot of different pressures, a lot of different coverages on the back end. So, you know, good football team. So we'll have our hands full Saturday. Should be a good ball game. I think both teams will compete hard and really want to win, and that's obviously a big game for us. I think it's a big game for them too because they're playing a Power 5 team. I think their players will be highly motivated, playing with a lot of confidence based on the last couple of weeks, and you know, certainly feel like they can come in here and beat us. So it'll be a challenge for us.
Sonny, what was your reaction to last night's news from the Pac-12 office?
You know, first of all, you know, officiating a college football game is hard, especially you know, especially a fast-paced game that has as many plays as these games have these days, and as much space that these guys have to officiate is a lot different than officiating games 10, 15 years ago. It's also made it more difficult because, you know, every call is scrutinized, looked at a million different ways. So I mean, they've got a very difficult job. You know, replay is an interesting deal. I think that coaches as a group, I think we're certainly for replay. I think we want to try to get the calls right. I think it's the old adage, you better be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. You know, there's so many plays that are reviewed now. I'm not quite sure that's really what anybody intended to happen. So, you know, I don't know. It's a bit of a slippery slope when you just sit down and you look at the world of officiating. And I'm sure it's like most things. It's still evolving in a lot of different ways. I think replay is still, we've had it for a while, but I still think it's evolving. As far as the action from the league last night, you know, I think, you know, we live in a very highly accountable world as a football coach. You know, we're accountable to a lot of different people, you know, to presidents and athletic directors, and to we have to come in and answer to media. We have to answer to our alums and boosters and fans, and then certainly we have to answer to our players as coaches. And so, you know, it's a very, very, very highly accountable business that we're in. And I think that when you operate in this world, you know what you're getting into, you appreciate it, you understand it. You know, you want the same level of accountability to exist within the conference. And you know, I applaud the Pac-12 for taking action and doing what they felt like was right and necessary. And you know, to me, they did the best they could. I mean, I think that's the thing. You know, what can they do? They can't reverse the calls, but they can certainly, you know, at least give me the feeling, and our fans the feeling, and our alumni the feeling, and our administration the feeling that they want to get it right. And so I applaud them for taking action, and I know that they do want to get it right.
Are you above and beyond that terribly frustrated that given the fact that they have multiple views of replays.
Yeah,
they get to see it in slow motion. They get to see it in ways that the guys on the field couldn't see it.
Yeah,
They still couldn't get it right.
Yeah, I think that's I think that again, I think the standard in replay has to be indisputable video evidence, and I think that if it starts and ends there, then I think the game all of a sudden becomes a lot easier to officiate from a replay perspective.
Sonny, you said after the game that you'd find out what your team was made of, how they responded this week. What have you seen from them?
Well, I saw a team came back on Sunday that was hurt and frustrated, and but also moved on and practiced really well Sunday. So today will be a big day for us. We'll have a pretty good sense. Tuesday practice after a day off is that's when you kind of usually have a pretty good idea about how your players are going to respond and where they are mentally. So I'll know a little bit more today. But like I said, Sunday I thought they were in a great spot. I thought they felt just like we did as a coaching staff. I think they were disappointed we didn't play better and didn't give ourselves a better chance to win and compete at a high level on Saturday. But at the same time, I think they realized that we have a lot to play for, and this is a big ball game.
Yeah, kind of on that last note, how do you maybe deal with, or what do you kind of think about the fact that there's a lot that is on the line Saturday? A lot of how the season will be judged comes down to Saturday. How do you kind of balance that, maybe pressure and importance?
I think it is important to, I know I'm certainly, I've certainly had to go back and think a little bit about the way I was going to view things, regardless of the outcome on Saturday. Just, how far we've come this year, and and just how much more competitive this team has been, and we've had some exhilarating wins, and we've had some disappointing losses, and we've played really well at times, and we hadn't played well at times, but we've made progress in so many different ways, and so we need to win this ball game, in my opinion, because of number one, it's a game that we can win. We're going to have to play really well to win. It's going to be just like it was Saturday against Stanford, or the Saturday before that against USC, or I guess that was Thursday. If we play well and we play at a high level, then we're going to have an opportunity to win, and if we don't, we won't. And so from that perspective, we're excited about it and looking forward to the game. I think that the thing that would be gained the most by getting to a bowl game, I think, would be twofold. I think the most important thing probably is just the psyche of our players and feeling like they really accomplished something. I think that part of it would be, really important and pretty critical. Just from where we were to be in the bowl discussion, I think is, again, a real credit to those guys. And I think the second thing that is to be gained from that, which is just probably equally as important, is obviously the practices. When you're a young football team, you need the practices. And so, if you think about it, we played a Stanford team that had a lot of upperclassmen on Saturday that had been to 4 BCS bowl games. So if you sit down and you start looking at, practices, all that stuff, I mean, they probably had 80 practices, between 80 and 100 practices over a 4-year span that, that our program hadn't had. We've had, I think, one bowl game in the last 4 years now, and it was it was an early ball game. It wasn't a later one. And so that you don't get as many practice opportunities. And so when you sit down and you look at all that, I mean, getting to bowl games is pretty important. And it just helps you grow up, and especially when you're young. And, we need that. I mean, there were times out there Saturday, I mean, we're playing in the ball game with 3 true freshman linebackers. We're still doing that at times, and there's just not many people that are, and certainly not teams that are on the cusp of bowl eligibility. And so, again, I think it's a real credit to our players to, have put themselves in position to even be talking about it.
Sonny, how important is is getting off to a good start Saturday going to be to you? We talked about this a little bit before and just how
it always makes it easier.
Early in the season, you did so well coming out of the gate.
Yeah,
and lately not so good.
It makes it easier. I think we're a resilient enough bunch where we can kind of get refocused and recover. But it's certainly when you start fast, it just makes everything easier. You get into a rhythm more quickly, and I think in a lot of ways it brings out the best in your team. When guys get excited and get emotional, and it's certainly makes it easier. And so that'll be a big emphasis for us this week, is trying to get off to a quick start.
Curious why on Saturday when you won the toss, you chose to play defense first, because early in the year I think you took the ball first.
Yeah. And the reason we did that Saturday, we deferred, and the thought was, there was some pretty significant wind early in the ball game, and so the thought was, okay, look, if we can, we felt like we could get some stops defensively. We felt like if we get Stanford's punt game is probably not the strength of their team. And so the thought was, okay, well, if we can get a stop here, they're punting into the wind, and we have a chance to get the ball at midfield and maybe have a chance to be able to do something pretty quickly from that perspective. And obviously they drove it down and scored. And, which meant we got the ball to start the second half. But, in hindsight, it's one of those things. If you stop them, it's really plays right into your hands. And if you don't, then you kind of go, well, I wish we would have taken the ball,
You were talking about it a few minutes ago, the importance of this game. Is it almost worrisome at all knowing that you have either this great result in a good psyche or the
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, I think it's, as I said, it's like getting off to a fast start. I mean, it certainly makes it easier, but I don't think it's necessarily the end of the world if you don't. I think that, I think the mindset of our players, I think everyone associated with our program, certainly internally, can see that we have a pretty bright future. I don't think it's a hard thing to see when you sit down and you just look at who's coming back, and we know it's not going to be easy, but I think we're all excited about it. I think the players are too, and so opportunities to start refining that next week is a big deal. But at the same time, we know we have a pretty good sense of where we're headed, and with a lot of hard work and all the things that have to happen into becoming and growing into a good football program. But I do think that, we have a pretty good sense that we're going to be a good football team.
Getting back to the fast starts, have you been able to figure out why in games where, like UCLA, USC, where you scored points in those games, it's not like you just got shut down, but at the beginning of games you just put yourself in a hole? Yeah,
hard to say. I think a lot of times what happens with us, when you play against really, really athletic defensive fronts, which those two teams come to mind, and Stanford to a somewhat the same extent, they're really good up front, and so what happens is those guys, get a pretty good lather coming off, and you're trying to drop back and throw the ball against those guys. When they're really fast and they're fresh, they can be hard to block. As the game continues and plays out, they become a little bit more fatigued, and it becomes a little bit more of a different matchup. Their athleticism now, starts to leave them a little bit, and that's part of the whole thought behind being a fast-paced football team. Is that it's an equalizer, because the more plays you run, the more fatigued somebody's really, really good athletes get, and the more they become like normal guys. And so that's part of it, I think, to some extent, because, again, those are two pretty athletic fronts, and against Stanford as well. And sometimes it just takes a little bit of time to get the lather off those guys.
What can you do about that?
Well, you got to get better physically. That's the biggest thing. Got to get better physically, and then the biggest thing too is you just got to execute early. Because if you can make a couple of first downs early, then that goes away pretty quickly. And if you don't, those guys stay lathered up for a long time. And if you have a bunch of 3 and outs, you might have 4 possessions. They played 12 plays. Where if you string together a 19-play drive and score, or even don't score, then it changes the way that those guys play to an extent.
Also, I think after Stanford, your players have said that you maybe mentioned the bowl game, and you said, I'm only going to talk about it once. This is what's on the line. Just kind of curious what the thought process was to bring it up that one time. Yeah, it's just kind of,
we're kind of a process-oriented team and program, and so I think you want to focus on the process and appreciate the process and not necessarily focus on dangling a bunch of carrots and that kind of thing. I've always believed it's a little bit like recruiting. If you have to beg somebody to come to your school, then typically you're going to have to beg them to play hard. I've always believed that, and it's always something that, and I think that's kind of the way when you manage your football team. If you're constantly having to, to invent motivation for those guys, I don't know that necessarily is a good thing. You hope that you build enough character and toughness, and you hope that they invest enough to where you don't have to do that. And so, the good thing about this team, I think they are heavily invested, and I think we need to focus on getting better. I don't necessarily know how thinking about where are we going to go play a potential bowl game or any of that kind of stuff, I don't know how that makes you get more prepared for a game. And so for us, we want to focus on the stuff that matters, which is, practicing well and playing hard and watching film and, going to class and studying for tests and, doing that kind of stuff, as opposed to spending a lot of time worried about, what kind of clothes are we going to wear? Do I need to get a winter coat? That kind of thing.
But to bring it up once is still acknowledging it.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think, to me, again, these guys are smart, they know the deal, and they, I just wanted to make sure that they understood, look, here's where we are, and this is what's going to happen, and so there wasn't any talk about, if we win, are we going to get in a bowl game? I think it's pretty clear that if we win, we're going to, and that, look, it's there. Let's focus on what matters for us, which is, handle what we can handle, but let's don't deny something that's obviously, out there.
A couple things on BYU. They obviously lost a really great player in the quarterback after a few games, and they're playing this senior, I think he's a JC kid actually, Christian Stewart. It seems like he's gotten better as they've gone along. But how do you judge what they are as a team and even him based on the last 3 weeks they've played teams that they're pretty overmatched?
Yeah, that's a good question. I truthfully, it is hard to walk away with a sense of, okay, here's exactly where they are. Just because again they've played some good opponents, but it's been a while, and so I don't know what that does to your team. I really don't. I know that they're going to be prepared and ready to play. I know they have talent, but for me to speculate on what that does to your team, I think everybody handles that different. So I don't know how they're going to, what that means exactly when they come in here. In regards to the quarterback, I think that, they changed their offense a little bit. Taysom Hill was such a focal point of what they were doing in terms of running the football. The new quarterback is, as you said, has really improved. He's, a little bit more of a thrower. He's a very capable runner. He's a strong physical runner. They just don't run him as much as they did Taysom. And I think that, we'll have a better sense of all that on Saturday. Not a whole lot. Yeah.
Okay, guys, any further questions for Sonny?
The thing about it, let me say this, though, is when you play somebody like that, they've done exactly what they're supposed to do. And I think that's a credit to them and their players and to their coaches. You guys have seen games, and I've coached in games to where, a team might be overmatched and a team doesn't handle it the way they're supposed to handle it. And to BYU's credit, they've handled it as well as you can possibly handle it. dominated in every facet, dominated on special teams, dominated on defense, dominated on offense. And, and I think, again, that's a real credit to them and their program.
Okay, any other questions, you guys? Okay.
Yeah, everybody's healthy. Yep, I think you'll see a little bit more of Jalen Jefferson. I think you'll see a little bit more of Jake Carney. Yeah, everybody else. We came out of the Stanford game remarkably healthy. To play two, physical, tough football teams the last 2 weeks in USC and Stanford, we've really stayed remarkably healthy.